The next NBA season is almost here, and the New York Knicks have still failed to execute any type of trade to improve their roster. But that doesn't mean that they're done with making trades. They could still execute a trade before the season starts or even in the season before the trade deadline. And thanks to Fred Katz of The Athletic, we now know who the 3 top Knicks who potentially could be traded next season are. We're going to break down all of this and so much more today. Let's get started. What New York Knicks players could potentially be traded either before the season starts or during the season before the trade deadline? Well, thanks to Fred Katz, we now know who those 3 Knicks players are. According to Fred Katz, he states that the top 3 trade candidates currently for the New York Knicks, in his opinion, are Evan Fournier, RJ Barrett, and Immanuel Quickley. According to Katz, these are the top 3 options for players the New York Knicks may move either before the season starts or during the season. And if you've been watching or following the New York Knicks, this is not a surprise to you at all. Evan Fournier and Immanuel Quickley, those 2 names have been on the trading block ever since last season. Immanuel Quickley's name came up in trades as early as November of last season. Now, obviously, his value has gone up, so the New York Knicks have taken him off the trade market to an extent because they still want to trade him if it means getting a star or superstar. But if they can't get that, they're likely not going to trade him. Ever since Evan Fournier gave that open speech where he basically stated in that newspaper that he wanted to be traded from the New York Knicks, he doesn't understand the moves the New York Knicks are doing, and he doesn't have a great relationship with head coach Tom Thibodeau. Everybody thought he was going to be moved already, but even he hasn't been moved. If anything, they look like they're going to head into the season, the New York Knicks, with retaining and keeping Evan Fournier on the bench. And given his recent comments about the Knicks, that could be a disaster. But one of the names on this list, and I'll pull it up again, that might have shocked you, RJ Barrett. Clearly, if you've been following the Knicks, RJ Barrett has been on the trading block for the New York Knicks as far as last season in regards to trying to get Donovan Mitchell. Now, obviously, a deal didn't materialize that the Knicks liked, so that never happened. But there has been rumors as well, too, that RJ Barrett's name was thrown around in the Paul George negotiations. Now, I'm not sure if RJ Barrett being mentioned took that trade off the table or not, but I do know that the Clippers and Clippers management were high on RJ Barrett and definitely were looking to potentially add him in any type of Paul George deal. I don't know how far those conversations went, and I don't know to what extent the New York Knicks were okay with including RJ. I just know that none of those deals happened. So at this point, it seems safe to say that the New York Knicks are comfortable with keeping RJ Barrett as part of their roster, unless it means getting a star or superstar. This is why I say it's not surprising to hear these names, because you've heard these names for the better part of this season and last season. And a lot of times, the reason these guys' names are involved is either due to salary filler, Evan Fournier, contracts being so massive that the money has to work, RJ Barrett, or teams believe in the piece that you have and think it can thrive on their team, especially if they're missing that piece. Immanuel Quickley would fit that bill as well too. But let's go down and break down potentially why each and every one of these players could be traded by the New York Knicks either before the season starts or during the season before the trade deadline. According to Fred Katz, Evan Fournier is an obvious choice because he doesn't want to return after being benched most of last season, and his expiring deal could be useful for salary matching purposes. So like I stated before, Evan Fournier's contract as of right now is absolutely seen as a salary filler. That's why he's been remained and retained on the New York Knicks for all of this time. I also think it's a main reason why the New York Knicks haven't bought him out yet, because they could do that as well too. They're keeping him because they want to utilize him and flip him and another player in a trade for a piece that is significant enough that it helps the New York Knicks get better next season or whenever they get that player. So I do think that Evan Fournier's contract is very, very valuable, but only valuable up until the point where somebody would accept it. If they're not having any offers for Evan Fournier, or they can't move him with another player to get another piece, They're going to have to explore options. They might buy him out and let him go ahead and walk and go to another team and see what that team can do with him. But honestly speaking, even though that is a scenario, it's hard for me to believe the New York Knicks would do that. They have a piece right here that they could use to flip with another player to get another piece to use on the New York Knicks team to build for the future. I don't know if they would go so fast and so far as to take it off of the table right away because they can't move Fournier. And let's get that right. They have actively been trying to move Evan Fournier. It's not like they've been sitting on their thumbs waiting for somebody to call. No. They've been actively trying to move him. So trust me when I say, if the Knicks could move him, they absolutely would. The unfortunate part is, every time they've tried to move him, they've always been asked to include some type of draft compensation. And they are just unwilling to do that. And I am totally on board with that. Don't make a problem worse by giving up more draft assets to move a player. But sooner rather than later, Evan Fournier will not be part of this team anymore. So whether you hate him or you love him or you don't even care, regardless, Evan Fournier will not be part of this team after next season, guaranteed. Whether he leaves earlier than that is anybody's guess. But definitely next season, you won't see him with the New York Knicks again. But let's go over to another player that we mentioned on this list from Fred Katz regarding who is most likely to be traded by the New York Knicks either before the season starts or during the season before the trade deadline. Obviously, we went through Evan Fournier, but the next player on that list was R.J. Barrett. According to Fred Katz, the reason that R.J. Barrett's name mostly comes up in trade talks is for financial reasons, particularly if the Knicks want to trade for a star. That's at least what league sources tell The Athletic. This is very interesting to note because basically what it states is the New York Knicks are not going to move R.J. Barrett at all unless it's for a star, superstar, or all-star. And if that's not on the table, R.J. Barrett is not being moved. To an extent, I like to hear this because it tells me that R.J. Barrett is safe for the most part unless one of those stars become available. That's the first thing. But it does scare me a little bit as well. R.J. Barrett is your draft pick. He's young. He's developing. He's thriving, obviously, as we've seen in FIBA and in the playoffs. I am very hesitant at this point to include R.J. Barrett in any type of star or superstar type of deal. And the only reason why, because I believe R.J. Barrett playing next to that number one option that the Knicks trade for would absolutely thrive. He would be unleashed, unlocked. He would look exactly as you want him to look because defenses would have their hands full with that star you traded for and with Jalen Brunson and maybe with a couple of other players as well too that stretch out the floor for shooting, which means R.J. Barrett will have the room to do anything and everything he needs to do. And the final name on the list for Fred Katz regarding who most likely could be traded next season or before the season starts is Immanuel Quickley. According to Fred Katz, league sources tell The Athletic that Quickley's name has popped up in trade discussions this summer, though the Knicks have placed a high value on the Sixth Man of the Year runner-up. Quickley is eligible for a rookie scale extension according to Fred Katz, but there doesn't appear to be any rush to get a deal done. This is important to note because Ian Bagley of SNY basically said the same thing about Immanuel Quickley and the New York Knicks. He stated that the Knicks are in no rush to get Quickley an extension, and they could even wait as close to the end of September or as early as October to make that extension happen for Immanuel Quickley. So that's important to note here. And I think that they're doing this because they're waiting potentially to see if any teams get desperate as we head into the last leg of this offseason for teams to want to make a trade and potentially give up way more than they would have early on in the offseason to get that same type of deal done. It's very interesting to note what the New York Knicks are doing here and how they're approaching Immanuel Quickley and his contract extension. But I do think that Immanuel Quickley's days on the New York Knicks are absolutely numbered. The signing of Donte DiVincenzo more or less outlined the fact to me that Immanuel Quickley's days are numbered on the New York Knicks. I don't think it's an if. I think it's a when. I think we're talking about when the right deal is on the table. That is when Immanuel Quickley will be moved off the New York Knicks. And don't get me wrong, I love Immanuel Quickley. I think he's really good, and I think he's going to be a really good player in this league. The problem is you have to make decisions on each and every player that you roster. Some players are great, but don't fit the long-term strategy of the team. Some players are great and do fit that long-term strategy. You have to prioritize and verify who, if at all, that you have supports what you're trying to do, which essentially is get a championship. And if Quickley doesn't support that, or can help you get a piece that better helps you support that. So I'm in favor of moving Quickley. I just have no earthly idea who the Knicks would trade Immanuel Quickley for at this point. And my point is, he's going to go into next season off the bench again. And I think him coming off of the bench for the New York Knicks is a disaster because it doesn't increase his value. If anything, it keeps it more or less where it is. So all he can do is kind of go down from there, unless he becomes sixth man of the year, and in which case, that's the best he can do in terms of being a bench player. I think at some point, if you start him and you give him a lot of starts, that builds up his value enough where other teams may want to trade for him and trade a star for him. But Immanuel Quickley is absolutely a name to watch on the trade market for the New York Knicks. They have been trying to move Immanuel Quickley for a very long time now, but they haven't been able to get the package that they wanted. And I think heading into this season, or even during the season, the New York Knicks will receive that trade package that they like and want for Immanuel Quickley, and they will get a deal done and execute a trade to move Quickley off of the Knicks and get another piece on this team that they can use to build with. I fully believe that. But there you have it, folks. According to Fred Katz, the 3 players on the New York Knicks currently that are most likely to be traded either before the season starts or during the season before the trade deadline are RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley, and Evan Fournier. And that, for me, is not surprising, though I am waiting on pins and needles to see who the New York Knicks actually end up trading and moving out of their roster. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a comment below, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, Knick fans. Peace.